I'm Ronnie Eldridge, and I'm here with my husband, Jimmy Breslin, and we're going to continue our discussion about politics and the world we live in. We were talking a while back about political managers and candidates, and you were throwing around names, and it made me realize, you know, I was in the city council for 12 years, and all the 12 years I was married to you, and you would write columns. You're a columnist and not a newspaper reporter, so you're going to explain that to us in a minute, the difference between those things. But you'd write columns, and you would attack the speaker, or you would attack a colleague of mine in the council. And I would go to work, and some people would say, well, I saw Jimmy's column, and boy, that was really something. And I would have to say, you know, what column? Oh, I don't know what he's talking about. And just totally, constantly pretend I wasn't with you. It took its toll, so I'm not too sorry that I'm not in the council anymore, as long as you're still writing your columns.
You're making that story up.
No, I'm not making it up.
The people on the city council weren't worth attacking, so over 12 years I had 3 columns maybe.
Well, I know you had a few bit more.
So now
anyway,
you take it as the
But I always wondered, I remember when the Commissioner of Transportation stopped a project that the city council had funded in the district that I represented, because you said that you preferred the prostitutes on 42nd Street to the Disney World on 42nd Street.
I do.
And what did they do? They stopped the whole project. So it was an interesting...
You should have had the man half gone before that. I mean, you got to keep it. Anybody this lousy must be attacked, must be destroyed. You know, a clerk must be slain before he rises above his station, because by the very inadequacies that make him a clerk, he can wound everyone around him.
But that's one of the contradictions about you. I mean, you are totally opposed to the death penalty.
Yeah,
and then you talk about the clerks, or this guy or that person should be slain. Now, why do you do that?
Because
you don't really mean it then.
No, you're doing that for a good cause, and it's in immediate anger. To sit and coldly set a date for an execution 18 months from now in a prison, and you're a bureaucrat making the arrangements, that's bad. That's
especially
sick.
For a crime that was committed 15 years ago. Some of these people that are being executed. So do you think the death penalty is a deterrent to crime?
Oh, of course not. Come on. It's been going for 1,000 years, and the thing still goes on, the crime. No, that deters nothing.
And you're a practicing Catholic?
Yes.
Good Catholic?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what good is. I practice Catholic.
Well, I mean, you live a life that you think
I let
is
people
not
think
filled with sin and bad things.
Well, I don't
right?
know. I guess not. That's too
I don't
bad,
think you do.
huh?
I know. You'd like people to believe that you really do, but you don't. But how do you reconcile the Church's position with birth control or abortion and the death penalty?
Look, they're consistent on the death penalty and abortion. They're against it. That's their official position.
That's true. Yeah.
I think most of them are for the death penalty, most of the clergy, most of the people in the church, and because they're right wing. And the abortion, of course, they're against.
But let me just say something, because they're against abortion because they consider the fetus to be a human person.
Living.
Right.
Yes.
Which is what...
Consistent.
Yeah, right.
I don't get involved. I have a faith and a deep belief in the faith. I don't get involved with peripheral things like birth control. I think it's crazy. I don't know what they're talking about, and I don't think incidentally anyone else does either. They've got an untenable position, and they proceed to try to pursue it, and I think it's crazy. The Pope did some exorcisms the other day, I read in the paper. That's nuts. I mean, what are you doing with these things? There's important things here to do with oppression, slavery, people being killed needlessly. Come on, get into that. Don't play with other things. Follow the life of Christ, which is all I think they should do. If they do that, they're not going to have any trouble. They're not going to give, they give you sermons. You know, I had to hear a gospel with a marriage at Cana. That's a big thing, where the Lord changed wine into water for a head waiter at a wedding reception. I read that, I want to throw it away. I see the word head waiter in the life of Christ. I know that somebody made it up, whoever wrote it a long time ago. This is nuts. Stick with the main things.
And you see a similarity, don't you, between religions? I mean, you've come to temple with me.
And there's nothing.
And you've said it's the same thing.
I know the prayers.
Yeah.
The prayers are all the same.
I don't necessarily think it's exactly the same when I go to church with you, but it's all right.
Because they knock the Jews too much.
Well, it gets you a little upset, right?
Yes, it's beyond belief.
Yeah.
They still got things in these in the Gospels that I mean, I don't know what I mean. I mean, it's anti-Semitic. Don't worry about it. And I know people that slink out of church after they get through reading those things. And we've gone and we've argued. And people, they'll nod and they'll say they're changing them, they're rewriting a lot of this stuff. And I says, what good does it do me if I'm sitting there with my Jewish wife and this guy's reading on the thing? John Mancini, I work with the same thing. He keeps telling his kids, don't believe it on the side of his mouth.
But you still
when
go.
they go to church.
It's very much,
still go.
And it's
Yes.
the world, because
Yes.
people are still not necessarily reflective, right, of what the leadership is or what goes on.
I don't
in
think
something.
they hear any of those things. They just sit there.
The Supreme Court, I read today, I think, is hearing a case about vouchers and the fact that vouchers are used mostly. What state was it? Did you read that? Vouchers are being used mostly to assist in tuition payments in parochial schools.
Yeah.
Whether that is constitutional with separation of church and state. Don't you think we have too much religion around in our secular lives?
Well, in what way now? I don't think you should, tax money should go for
Well, should we
parochial
always
school
have
teaching.
prayers? Should the city council, for instance, have a prayer before it starts?
Well, what are you asking me? You
should
have the
we have
votes
this
there.
whole question about prayer in school?
Yeah.
Should we have that thing? Where did they have prayers before football? And then there was a big thing. Where was that? In Texas? You remember that last year or something?
Well, they all after a basketball game, the professional players gather on the court and pray.
Right.
Who are you praying to? They asked the one guy.
I mean,
Do you think
to
that
pray to
when
win
you're
a
praying-
game is
Yeah,
not really
it's
what
a
we
little
should be
bit much-
praying about, right?
much for me. Do you think that God is going to help you win the game? He said, yes, I believe that. I would say you're insane, and that ends these.
I think
prayer
where I
things.
mind it the most is that I think they bring in God and religion, political people, instead of meritorious words. I mean, instead of the kind of message or something that they should be able to give themselves.
Yeah.
And it's like a crutch. Instead of having really inspiring words to give, they give us God. Do you know? And expect that will satisfy
take care of
everybody's
everything.
needs.
No.
Do you think the quality of rhetoric, the way our leaders speak, has something to do with their?
Well, you tell me one thing that George Bush said in the campaign for president, and then you tell me one thing that Al Gore said. You know, you're always forgetting him. There's the one worst bore ever to come along, ever. Nothing. They didn't say anything. They never turned the phrase.
Well, is the
They
president
never
turning
lifted
phrases
it.
now?
No, what, evil axis or
Right.
comic book words.
Did you cover? You didn't cover this presidential campaign very much.
No, I won't go. No,
Has that
you don't do
changed?
that anymore because it's all on the on
television?
the television things. I can remember.
And it goes forever, right? So if you started doing it, I mean, they're
years.
starting now. They're up in New Hampshire.
There is a group of about 4,000 people, political consultants, newspaper and television people, and lobbyists, who have an interest in starting a political campaign 3 years before it's due, because that's how they make their livings. So these people direct it. Plus, with the 3,000 or 4,000 come 6 or 7 candidates who jump in, and there you've got a campaign going before there's any need for it.
Who was it? Gene McCarthy, who said we always live a little better.
In election year, absolutely. Well, I remember
But that was basically before campaign finance.
Yep.
Well, I guess it was at the beginning of the
It was at the
month.
beginning.
Yeah.
We were in Phoenix the other day. We were just talking.
Right.
I covered the 1964. I hate like hell to admit I was around. Goldwater campaign at the end for the New York Herald Tribune, and we're at the Paradise Valley schoolhouse where he voted on election day, with nobody around him, no agents, no nothing. He was standing on line, and his wife Peggy was in front of him. He's talking to me, and he's playing tic-tac-toe on her back. She had a sunback dress on with a felt tip pen. Then she went in and voted, and his son bent down and took a picture of her legs in the voting booth. And he was saying to me that Goldwater saying, you know, anything I had to say in his campaign could have been done in 6 weeks. He says the same for Lyndon Johnson. I don't know what the hell we were doing for the last year. And it was only a year he was talking about.
Well, did they have to raise money the way they raise money now?
Well, they raised, I mean, they had They had their, Johnson had a war going on. He had defense contractors.
Right.
And Goldwater had the right wing that wanted to grab the country. There was money. Yes.
But nowhere near the money that we spend now.
But there was nowhere near the amount of television there is now.
Yeah.
The television
And
takes
that's
all
what
the
costs
money.
the money. Right.
I can remember being on Jamaica Avenue in a DeVega sporting goods store, and they had a television set in the window, and everybody gathered around to see a prize fight with Marcel Cerdan from France, Casablanca fighting Harold Green from Brownsville, Madison Square Garden, and you saw it on television. And Ernest Cat Robinson was a fighter from South Jamaica, and he's looking at it. He says, someday there ain't going to be no crowds at the fight arenas. Everybody's going to be watching this thing.
And that's true.
And that happened in politics, too.
I think an enormous difference, because all the money is raised, much more money than ever before is raised, but it's all spent buying the television time or producing the commercials. Meanwhile, to get voters' interest and to get them involved in the political process, it's a battle to find a place that you could help. I mean, you don't do any mailing anymore. That whole thing about, envelopes and stuffing envelopes, there's no such thing. There are no local campaign headquarters. There are no storefronts to walk into. And I think, in a way, that's why people are disinterested in politics, don't you think? It also gives enormous control, doesn't it,
I guess.
to unions as well as large corporations?
Where are girls going to meet husbands if you don't have political headquarters?
Oh, and now you're leading me up to my line that I say where I've met two husbands in politics.
Yeah.
The first one was Larry Eldridge at the Stevenson headquarters on the West Side, and you with Robert Kennedy.
Yeah.
It's a great thing, and there's nothing like it. So they don't do it. If you go to local political clubs now, you find people who are older, who remember the good old days. They're our age now, not the way we were then.
Plus the usual array of schizophrenics.
Right. Well, they always walk in. They walk in, but they don't have any places to walk into anymore because there are no headquarters. So we've lost that wonderful spirit and excitement about politics. Partly, I think, because we know too much about the candidates. Maybe. Do you think that's true?
No, I don't think so.
Well, we never knew that Jack Kennedy was carrying on with movie stars and other people.
I think it was there in the people would associate with it. Yeah.
Yeah, but you guys never really wrote about it.
No,
you all
absolutely
knew about
not.
it. Did you know about it?
No, I didn't.
Did you ever go to the Carlisle Hotel when
I didn't
he was
know.
staying
Dick
there?
Oliver did. My friend Dick Oliver covered it, and they told him that he goes out this door, the agent and a New York City inspector, and he's got it brought in the apartment two doors down. That's he uses this door.
Yeah.
I mean, he knew it, but he never put it in. Nobody put it in the papers.
Right. He never wrote those kinds of things.
No.
Who was it? Wilbur Mills was the first time that they wrote about that?
He had a girl jumped in the fountain or something like that.
But nobody ever wrote that he was a big drinker, right?
No.
So we never knew that he would go to hearings. He was, what was he, chair of the Finance Committee in the House?
Yeah, he was a big shot, Ways and Means.
Well,
the excitement is, I remember Lyndon Johnson in 1964 in an open car on Flatbush, and where runs in Bedford and Nostrand, all come together, and there was a crowd of 1 million people, a minimum. And he was standing in the car, and the police were trying to keep the people back, and he yelled at Murphy, was a New York City Police Commissioner, Mike Murphy. He says, "Don't you block my people, they want to come and see me." So he said, it isn't that we're afraid, they ain't going to hurt me. He said, "No, we know that, Mr. President. It's that we're afraid they love you too much." So Johnson looked at me and said, "You the finest police chief in the United States." That was some...
We're going to break for a minute, and we'll be back in a minute. Okay. So thank you, and please keep watching.
You don't have to like me.
Or you can.
You don't have to run with me.
You really don't have to run away from me.
And we're not all that different.
I like good food, good music. I want a good job.
I want my kids to live in a world
where they are safe and loved
and respected for who they are.
You don't have to like me.
But if you talk to me,
you might.
We can end prejudice if we talk to each other.
Call. Tell us what you'd do.
Together we can build one America.
Jimmy, talking about crowds and keeping the crowds away from the candidates or the public officials, you were in Dallas, weren't you, in
Yes.
November, what was that date now?
November 22nd, 1963. Right. That's another one of those dates you remember.
Right, you'll never forget. Yeah. Everybody knows where they were that day.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning, wasn't it?
Let me ask you a question. Do they remember the majority of people today weren't even around then?
Right.
I don't think it's
I
got
know.
the impact on them it does on us.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But it certainly began, didn't
began
it? The separation between trying to keep people safe. No.
Candidates did not have any official protection until they were elected.
So
in
when
those
did
days.
when did the protection start? I mean, that was followed.
Well, after that, everybody got shot. Holy Jesus,
Right.
beyond belief. Kennedy got shot. Bobby Kennedy got shot.
Martin Luther King
Martin
first.
Luther King got shot.
Then Kennedy.
Martin Luther King, Kennedy. Then they went down, they shot George Wallace, if you
Right.
remember. And he had no protection, he had no civil service. Then they shot, they wound up, Ronald Reagan had a ton of it, and they shot him.
Oh, right.
It was amazing. Ronald Reagan was always, they were always very nervous about being shot because at the Republican National Convention in in Miami in 1968, he had, every time his cars would leave the convention, there'd be cowboy cops, the Western guys, jumping on the back and swinging their legs around and guns showing. He was very nervous about it. And with the finest protection, supposedly the Secret Service, he got shot. So you tell me.
So we've watched this progression when you think about it, and as we talk about it, we watch this progression from the openness. I remember when Franklin Roosevelt would drive down, he once drove down Broadway and always rode in an open car, always waving and nobody around. But we go right up to now. So first we had all those assassinations and shootings. Then what caused the Giuliani administration locally to make a fortress out of City Hall? I can't even remember exactly what it was that caused that.
Mussolini.
Right.
That's simple. He was a little man in search of a balcony. That's all. And he had a dismal record on September 10th.
Yeah.
And the 11th, he got lucky with the war.
Well, I know, but now, I mean, now did it happen right after the garage and the World Trade Center explosion? Is that when he started the additional security? I think it must have been. Then it got carried away, and then everybody got carried away.
93 he wasn't the mayor. The mayor of the city of New York when the explosion came was David Dinkins, and he was in Puerto Rico. Ray Kelly took charge.
So was it just act up, just demonstrating? Is that what made him close City Hall? Now, in retrospect, when you think about it, I mean, I was appalled at what happened, and we used to have press conferences on the step when we fought them because they didn't want us to be on the steps. I mean, now when you look at it, when the whole September 11th catastrophe, you realize what was it that made him so nervous? But tell us, let's talk a little bit about September 11th. I mean, it was a catastrophe. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Who was supposed to tell us about it? You had the FBI. You had the CIA. They're all so smart now. You had the Army intelligence, Navy intelligence. What else did you have? National Security Agency. They're supposed to be able to listen into any place on Earth. They were supposed to be able to listen to any language. Did nothing. Nobody knew these people were coming. Right. Nobody. I don't know what that's about.
And then we had the bunker on the 23rd floor where everybody was. And the FBI, the Secret Service, had their offices also in the Trade Center. But, you know, when we were in Phoenix last week, people, when they heard we were from New York, it was, they'd give you their condolences. And it was like, oh, we're so sorry and everything. I don't think the city was destroyed by September 11th. And that's what they keep talking about, this whole thing, we're going to rebuild the city. We had a catastrophe, and a lot of people lost a lot of people that were very dear to them, and we lost enormous buildings and headquarters for companies. But we weren't destroyed. We don't have to rebuild the whole city. We have to do some planning and building downtown. But I mean, are we carrying this now a little too far?
They say that life has changed forever for people in this city.
Well,
and
it has changed because
come on.
It hasn't, not ordinary life.
Right,
but
did you get? It's changed if you're in the World Trade Center and you had your head blown off you. Your life got changed pretty good.
Right.
What about people that didn't even get a speck of dust on their hair?
Well, then when they go flying someplace, it's harder, and now you have to have ID to get into more places. That has changed life.
The stupidity of security, yes, that's changed.
Not all security is stupid.
Why?
Well,
what did the security do for you? Your only security is where it's coming from. This stuff. Do something about that. You're not going to stop it, are you?
Well, I remember the other day when we came home and we were going through the security check at the Phoenix airport, and I was ahead of you, and all of a sudden I look back and I hear this argument, and you're arguing with a head guy there, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I just want to get out of here. I'm going to pretend I don't know him. And then we got on the airplane, you open on the front page of the Arizona, what's the paper?
Phoenix, Arizona Republic.
Republic. There is an article, what? By a retired general.
Joe Force was the governor of a state.
Oh.
And he was going to Washington to speak, and he brought his Congressional Medal of Honor to show the West Point undergraduates who had never seen one. So he was bringing it up, and they took it from him and said he could scratch somebody and hurt them with it. You know why? Because the people doing the security have what we call square badges. They're not good enough to pass a police department test. They're under patrolmen. They're failures. And they're playing big shots with these badges and insignias, and they abuse people, and they're no good. They can't find anything. And no protection.
I mean, in deference to them, like school teachers and other things, some of them are very nice.
No, with me it's all or nothing.
And they try. I know, it's all or nothing. You have a few favorite traits. I mean, it's all or nothing, and when you tell me that it's either black or white, I never really believed you, but that happens. It's really true. The other favorite saying that I think you have, or that what you said to me once in a plaintive voice, is, why don't people know when I say yes, I mean no?
Yes.
So tell us why you do that.
Because
chaos.
Well, no, when somebody asks you for something, you're going to hurt their feelings and tell them no? Yeah, tell them what to make them feel good. Say yes. And hope they understand you don't want to do it, that's all.
But they wait for you you say you're coming someplace, and they wait.
What?
And then,
I'm no
you don't come, or yes, I'm going to have a cup of coffee with you tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And they keep calling for
10 o'clock we'll have it.
10 times, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I got to make a living. I can't do all this, but I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. So you say.
Are you driven to the writing? I mean, that was something that seems to me you were born with, since you had the Flash when you were how old? 8?
Yeah.
Tell us about the Flash. You used to you
good.
wrote
Neighborhood
gossip, right?
Yes. Yeah, you'd hear things. The woman complaining her husband was impotent. I didn't know what the word meant, and I put it in the paper. We asked, write in and tell us what it means. I put the woman's name in, too. Yes.
And what happened?
I don't know. There was a usual riot, but that's all right. That's the way your life goes.
And how did you get interested in this and in justice and stuff? Was it just from Catholic school?
Deep, good character. I don't know.
What about your mother?
Well, what's right and wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so obvious. How could you take the wrong side of these things?
But I never met her, but I understand your mother was a pretty strong person.
Yes, quite.
So tell us about it.
Well, no, she was very strong and a fierce woman, and had views, and she had the Harlem Welfare Center. She was a supervisor there. And her, two of the people working in her unit, one was Quinones, that went on to run the high schools in New York,
right.
And the other was the opera singer.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
All right.
Give me a shot here.
I can't remember it either.
At any rate, she wanted to be in the
Arias or
Metropolitan.
something.
She wanted to be in the Metropolitan Opera, and she had to practice. So my mother used to put her in the bathroom, in the waiting room, and she vocalized for 45 minutes while you had lines of young children stamping their feet and screaming. They had to go to the bathroom, and the mother's pounding on the door. She wouldn't stop. She just kept going.
So
and she wound up in the Met. As you know, we saw her on the plane that day. Big Mink Stone.
Yeah, it was pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
One final area I'd like to talk about is we traveled last year down through Arizona down to Nogales, which is right on the border of Mexico, and saw the wall that separates the United States from Mexico, and saw the customs thing, and then went further out in the desert and just saw a desert. What do you think about immigration and who brings the excitement into the city? I mean, there's a rational sense to this, changing the conversation, but I mean, it's the people that come in, isn't it? New cultures and new things, and the city certainly.
This country was built on new blood, and if you don't get it, you're going to be tired. You're going to wind up like England, where you can't advance past a certain point in life. Here, you can do anything. You really can.
You get weak from inbreeding?
Oh, sure. So always go against, you always call them the incest mob, you know. Well, if you remember now in the fence from Nogales, it's the border fence, you go through a turnstile and you're in Nuevo Nogales, Mexico, and the first sign that hits you is girls, 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 whiskey, everything, a nut house. You go up, what was it? It went up 3 blocks only.
Right.
And the mailman was there, McAlpin, named after McAlpin Hotel.
He was related to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he knew us, and he pointed out, here's the fabled fence, which is going to protect America. Now, remember the guy had the house right there? The guy had a house, and the front porch was right on the fence. If he wanted to come to America, he just had to throw a leg over and drop.
Right.
And then the mailman told us they'd whistle across the fence, they'd climb up their side and say, hold this baby. They'd hold the baby down, and then they'd come after it. He said the one guy, one of the mailmen, took the baby, took the child, and the Mexican came over the side and jumped and fell down and broke his leg. Now they had to cart him off to the hospital, and then he got deported. And here's a mailman stuck with a Mexican baby and having 4 or 5 of his own home. He didn't need another. And that's the great security. You saw this done.
I know. It's
why do they put in a paper that there's security?
I don't know. There's no security, and there are borders that are hard to cross, and I guess that's the story of life. I don't know. But thank you very much for spending this time with me, and I'll see you back at home. And I hope, if they renew my contract here, that you'll come back and join us another time. Thank you for watching.